What's up, everybody? Thanks again for stopping by for another edition of March 4th with Mike Bauman. I, of course, am your host, Mike Bauman. Whoever you are, wherever you're listening from, thank you so much for checking out the podcast. If you're a returning listener, I greatly appreciate your continued love and support. And if you're a brand new listener of the show, man, thank you so much for hopping aboard that pirate ship. You can follow me on Instagram at March 4th Pod, on YouTube at March 4th Pod. I'm also over there on the TikTok at March 4th Pod. The links to all my stuff are in the podcast description for this episode. So that means if you made it here, then you found me somehow. And I truly appreciate each and every one of yous taking the time to check out another edition of the March 4th with Mike Bauman podcast. I hope that everybody's doing well, man. It's officially summer here in the United States, and it is roasted out there, dude. I'm from the Midwest originally, and we would have some humid summers, dude. But this humidity here in the South is something crazy. I think the last few days we've been above 90 into the mid 90s, and it's like I was outside earlier just going to my mailbox, and I'm sweating. So if you hear my air condition kick on here in my home studio, which is basically me setting up shop in my dining room, big dreams start with small steps, kids. It's very toasty out there. So I hope that everybody's staying cool. I hope that you're having fun. Maybe you're getting a chance to take some vacays, take some trips, maybe go to a few concerts, maybe go out there and catch some rays. Hopefully you got your sunscreen, your SPF, kids, because sunburns aren't fun. But yeah, I'm a big goofball, folks. But I hope that everybody's has a great summer, man. I hope it's off to a great start. For me personally, over here in the Nashville area, man, things are going well with the podcast. So once again, thank you to everybody who's checking out the show. I've had a lot of really fun, awesome conversations lately with people from different ends of the musical spectrum. And it's just been cool, man. I feel really blessed to connect. And I know I say it a lot on the show, but I really do feel blessed and grateful for all of the awesome people that I've been able to connect with through this podcast. You know, it's something that I do selfishly because I love to do it outside of my day job in healthcare, which I also am very appreciative for and very grateful for, and work with great people. But doing this show, man, it's tapping into a part of myself creatively and just kind of even just who I am. I'm kind of an introverted extrovert, and I prefer smaller groups of people, prefer one-on-one interactions to big old groups. And it's cool when you're able to have these long form conversations with people and get to know them on more than just a surface level, and get to know the stories behind these artists and behind these folks, outside of the music industry, even that I have on the show, and really kind of let y'all know that, hey, man, we all go through stuff. We all got to walk through the darkness to get to the light. Life is full of ups and downs, but I'm a big believer in the human spirit, and we all have the ability to achieve big things, man. And big things, I know sometimes people hear that and they might be struggling with their purpose. And when I say big things, I'm not talking about fame and fortune and money and, all the things that we sell here in the United States that people should want, right? The quote unquote American dream, as it were. I'm talking about just being a good person, being a kind person, doing the things that you love, regardless of the monetary impact. If you love music, if you love art of any kind, painting, drawing, maybe you make things, or you're good at wood carving or carpentry, or you're good at flipping houses and putting in floors and redoing bathrooms, or you're good at working on cars. Like all those things that you enjoy that you didn't ask for, man, that's the stuff that really makes you feel alive. So when I talk about achieving big things, like I said, I'm not talking about fame and fortune. I'm just talking about figuring out whatever it is that makes you tick, whatever it is that makes you feel alive, and pursuing that with your whole heart, because those things that we love that we didn't ask for, those are the things that we really should be going after. Not to get all Dr. Phil on you, but for real, man. So big things to me is just being a good person and creating positive ripple effects in the communities that you're a part of, man. That's what it's all about. And so I'm truly humbled and grateful for the growth that this show has seen over the last 4 years that I've been doing it consistently. And I believe it was June of 2021 when I started doing 3 shows a month on Tuesdays, which I'm still doing, trying to get the show to weekly, but at the same time, again, balance and everything is a one-man band over here. So I appreciate all of you. I'm really grateful, and it's just cool to connect with people in a positive way, man. Because I hope that these conversations live on long after I'm gone. Not to sound self-righteous, but I'm getting to that point of life where, and I bring up my age a few times on this show. I'm kind of like an old man. In between the years, right? I'm kind of like an old. Well, I'm not a wizard because I don't have any magical powers, but I'm just an old soul, I guess you would say, even though I'm in my mid 30s. And I'm just kind of at that stage of life, man, where you start to become more aware of like your circle, who's in it, things that are important to you. And so that's what I mean when I say leaving a good legacy behind. I'm more aware of that now than I was when I was younger because um, I'm just more conscious of time and how fast it goes, man. So, anywho, that's a big rant to start this week's show. But speaking of good conversation, speaking of people chasing their dreams and giving it their all, the things that they love, this week's guest is a really bright talent. She's got a bright future ahead of her. Her single "Hometown Blues" is great. She is none other than Kennedy Jude. She is a singer-songwriter and an actor based in Chico by way of the Midwest. So again, anytime I can put on for somebody who is from the same part of the country that I'm from, it's awesome because we got a lot of talent in the Midwest, and sometimes we get disrespectfully referenced as the flyover states, but hey, you know what? We make your food, and we got a lot of great music from the Midwest, man. Prince, the whole Detroit scene. I could go on for days, but Kennedy Jude is a student out in Chico, California, and I actually got in touch with her by way of Tommy G, who is also a very talented artist in his own right. I'll put his links in the podcast description as well. But Tommy G was a guest on Anthony Church's podcast, the Proven Knowledge podcast. And Anthony Church is a friend of the show. I've been a guest on his show. He's been a guest on my show. And Tommy G reached out to me, sent me a very kind email, had some kind things to say about me and Anthony. And through the SOTA program at Chico State, which stands for School of the Arts, he is actually one of the managers that represents Kennedy Jude in her music. And so he sent me a really kind email about a little over a month ago and said, "Hey, man, Kennedy's an up and coming artist. Her single Hometown Blues came out in January. I think it'd be really cool if you could get her on the show." And so that's what we did. We connected and we had a great conversation, and it was just awesome to learn more about Kennedy's story, how she got into music and theater, her love for music, her love for acting and theater. And I think it's really cool that Chico State's got a program where they have their students be able to get involved musically and get their music out there and get their art out there. And so it was just a really fun conversation about her journey musically and as an actor, and we talk about all of it. So without further ado, I'm going to shove my big yapper and give you guys my conversation with Kennedy Jude. Here it is. All right. Well, Kennedy, thank you again so much for taking the time to do the podcast. It's good to get you on. It's cool to find out you're a fellow Midwesterner as well. So maybe we can geek out on some Midwest stuff on this show too. But thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Well, just as a place to start, man, checked out your song "Hometown Blues." Really, really loved it. It's got an awesome singer-songwriter vibe. Um, but I kind of want to go back. That's usually like where I enjoyed is starting with people is their earliest musical memories or what got them into music. So tell me a little bit about where this musical journey started for you.
Okay. Well, I would say I've been singing for most of my life. My mom was always a really big singer, and so that was something that she and I had in common. Um, I remember when I was younger, I used to get her to try and sing the same song melody over and over again in the car, and then I would try and harmonize with her, or vice versa, just to try and learn and how to figure it out. Um, I would say that's probably where um, my first enjoyment of it came from, which is, um, getting to spend time with my mom, which was nice, um, and getting to practice something and having that common with her. Um, and then as I got older, I would sing in choirs. I was in choir for, I think, 6 or 7 years throughout middle school and high school. I led a few choirs. I was a section leader, the whole shebang. I did some extracurricular choirs as well, um, in addition to just school choir. And then I would also sing in church when I was younger. I think is probably the first time I would actually like perform as myself in front of people. Uh, would just be like leading a worship team in like middle school.
So were you always pretty comfortable just from doing it from a young age in front of people, or did you ever have any nerves performing in front of people, whether it was choir or church, or did it come naturally to you?
I think a little bit of both. I think with choir, it was helpful to have the anonymity um, of just being in this large group. Um, in church, it was in front of people that I knew because I went to church every Sunday when I was younger. So I felt like I knew the people there, but it was a little daunting, especially if I had a part where I was singing solo or um, yeah, just like singing as myself and singling myself out. Yeah, I found it a little difficult to work up the nerve to do that a couple of times. I feel like it got easier as I got older. But it's also always been something that I've been really passionate about and really enjoyed. So it's always felt worthwhile to work up the nerve to perform in front of others.
Yeah, man, that's a challenge. I feel like some people like they have to kind of, I mean, there's like a lot of really famous artists who are very shy, and either when they get out on stage that's their most comfortable, so that does like that's less scary to them than talking like this, or they have to really geek themselves, get themselves geared up for that. You mentioned those memories with your mom, Kennedy. So like do you come from a musical family, or was it just like did she just kind of sing for fun? Like is it in your blood, or is it just something that you kind of took to?
I would say my mom fostered that relationship with me. It was more of a hobby than a career for her. She works in healthcare. Um, but she and I liked singing together a lot. She introduced me to a lot of music when I was younger. Um, yeah, I would say it's somewhat in my blood because having someone in your life at a young age who encourages your talents and your hobbies and your passions is always, helpful to foster those things and pursue them.
So when you mentioned like choir, performing in church, was there a moment where it became more than like a hobby, or it was like it became something where you're like this is something that I really want to pursue, or where you really found your voice?
I think where I found my voice was in songwriting. Um, for the most part, I started writing music. I think my first song was in fourth grade and it was called Sugar and Spice and it was terrible and I loved it and I was so proud of it. And I think as I got older and honed my craft a little more, it helped a lot with it helped as a coping mechanism a lot. And I think that is how I found my way to express myself, how to find my own voice, not only as a singer performer, but just as a person, being able to express myself honestly and truthfully and artfully.
Fourth grade writing songs, man. Do you still have the like the OG, the original writing of it? Do you still have it somewhere?
Oh, I hope so. I've moved a lot since then, so it might be in a box somewhere. But I really hope so. I think it was in a journal that I got from Girl Scouts from selling cookies as like a reward or an award for the number of boxes I sold. And it was cheetah print and it was like fuzzy on the outside. I remember this vividly and like pink trim around the edges. It was good stuff. I really hope it's somewhere.
If it's not, you gotta rebuy something similar to that. Amazon has everything. You gotta find another
Absolutely.
fuzzy songbook, man. Um, so then as you get into high school and stuff, you mentioned fourth grade, that's your first song. Are you taking excuse me, are you taking like voice lessons? Are you learning instruments along with singing? Like what's that journey like from being a little kid and doing it in church and choir and then progressing into being a teenager and having that form of self-expression?
Yeah. I would say I think I took one voice lesson in high school. They were expensive and I didn't have money. Um, it was for a musical theater role because I was having trouble belting. And I wanted to not ruin my voice before the end of the show. Um, for instruments, I took 2 years of piano lessons when I was maybe 8 and 9 years old. And I think I've stayed at about that level ever since. I really enjoy playing the piano, but I don't find myself getting much better. And I think that's just a lack of dedication. When I'm playing the piano, it's mostly to underscore myself singing. So it doesn't really progress very much. And then I also play a little bit of guitar. Again, not by a guitarist standard, but by like the average Joe standard. Um, I had a I got my guitar in middle school. I learned 10 chords, one strumming pattern, and then stayed at that level the rest of the time. But sometimes that's all you need if you're just trying to sing.
Yeah, well, and it's crazy too with guitar. There's multiple videos out there, but and it's I don't know, I'm not a super big audiophile, but I love the guitar and I can't really play, man. I have a guitar and an amp in my bedroom and I noodle around on it every now and again just because it's fun and it's like a good just kind of you know what I mean? Like especially like with metal, it's fun to just kind of I call it chug therapy, just the riffs, you know. But I don't tell anybody in Nashville that I play because there's like legit musicians here and I'm nowhere near, it was always just a hobby. I never took it seriously enough. But not making it about me, but relating it back to you. And the point I was making is I think even Ed Sheeran had a lawsuit recently where they were accusing him of like stealing somebody's riff or somebody, part of one of his songs. And he basically broke it down and was like, look, there's like the same four chords in all of these hits out there. And there's a YouTube video my brother, I think it was my brother Brandon showed me, God, probably 10 years ago. And it was so wild. All of these hit songs and the guy just same four chords, you know what I mean? Just different variations and different strumming patterns and how they played it. So suffice to say, if you figured out like 10 chord positions, I think you're on your way if you keep it
Yeah,
up.
I'm feeling pretty set. I can play something in C major or G major. That's that's two whole keys. And then if you get a capo, I mean, the world's at your fingertips.
Yeah, I never messed with the capo, man. I was again, I never got good enough or fancy enough that I felt like I could do that and feel like good like I know what I'm doing, you know what I mean? Um
Mm.
but yeah, I took lessons briefly when I was 19 years old and I almost took my guitar back to the store and like sold it back to them because I was so bad. But out my buddy Andy Langston, he is one of those musically inclined people where he can sing, plays the drums, plays the guitar, is getting into like synthesizer stuff. Say that word three times fast. Um, but he encouraged me. He was like, dude, instead of lessons, like maybe just try to learn some simple riffs or songs that you like, because then if you learn how to play something that you enjoy, it kind of helps you in your confidence a little bit. So that helped
Yeah,
me progress, from like being like, "Meh, meh," to actually being able to play some stuff. But so you mentioned like doing a play like so did you get into musical theater and all that as you got older into high school too?
absolutely. Yeah, I am a theater minor right now. Which is yeah, so I get to do shows probably about once a year because my schedule's busy, but um and because other people are also good at auditioning, which is, hey, great for them. Um, but yeah, I would say I've been doing theater since, yeah, probably about 13 years old consistently. It's another one of my big passions. I got a lot of stuff that I'm passionate about, which is, really fun. And then um, there's this quote I found online um, about someone who was talking about the term like a jack of all trades, and he was saying, among the cooks, I am the best engineer, and among the engineers, I am the best cook. And I think that's sometimes how it feels. Um, is I can be pretty decent at a lot of things, um, and I just spread out my passions. Yeah,
That's good though. It's good to have a multitude of interests, man, because you learn about other people, you learn about other skill sets. It helps you develop, and as you
yeah,
get older, like that'll be really beneficial. I didn't start doing this stuff, broadcasting it initially, like I said before I officially hit record, when I was giving you like a mini life breakdown in 10 minutes of how I got to do this podcast. But started out just exclusively print journalism. I was terrified of, being in front of a camera or being behind a microphone because I struggled with panic attacks.
mm,
Um, and that feeling when you have one, it's like terrifying. And then, and as I got older and learned like what they were, because when I was younger, I didn't really know like what it was. You know what I mean? You don't
yeah,
know, you'd have to be a pretty astute, 9, 10, 11-year old to be like, I'm having a panic attack. Maybe the
yeah,
kids because they have tablets and they're just like, they're constantly, it's like there's stimulation all the time. There's always a screen. But like, I remember when there wasn't an internet. That's how old I am. But yeah, so I was terrified of like getting in front of a camera or anything like that. I always went to like the worst case scenario. I was like, I'm gonna have a panic attack. I'm gonna bomb. It's gonna be all over YouTube, and then my career is over. I'll never do anything in journalism again. Like worst case scenario. And then I started doing like local high school games and stuff when I got out of college for a company called Toledo Sports Network, and it really helped me with my confidence with this kind of stuff, because there's just sort of an immediacy to that kind of work, where it's like when you have a camera on you, or you're mic'd up and it's live and there's people listening online, you can't really edit yourself. And there were times where I screwed up, but you kind of learn through it, and it just, you almost don't have time to be in your head because you have to be so focused on what you're doing. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Where it's like, I just have to focus on this. So I imagine with theater, like I was only in a couple of like plays when I was like a little kid. I thought it was fun to do in front of the class. And then when I was in front of the parents, I was like so nervous. I was, you know what I mean? Like I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
But for you, you mentioned doing that also from a young age. What were some of the first plays or some of your favorites, Kennedy?
Ooh, I would say, okay, my first official play was Elf the Musical Junior. I played Santa Claus. They put gallon Ziploc bags filled with cotton balls under my shirt, and then we put a belt under it so I'd have a good Santa belly, and then I had a fake beard and everything. It was golden. Um, that was my first play. I would say some of my favorites have been doing little shots of horrors. Um, More recently in college, I've been in Romeo and Juliet and in The Three Musketeers and in a play called Stop Kiss. Um, yeah, I really enjoy getting to explore different characters, and I think theater is a great place to um, explore performance, especially if, like you were talking about earlier, there are a lot of artists who feel more comfortable on stage than, talking one on one. I've always found theater really comfortable because I'm in front of an audience, but it's not as myself. And if I'm doing a good job, then they're seeing a character and they're not seeing me. Um, I've always found that like really appealing in terms of performance. I think that's really interesting. And then just getting to know the character myself is awesome and like such a interesting place to join introspection with like literary analysis. It's a really cool art form.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And you mentioned kind of like being able to escape into a character where so when like you're on stage, you're not it's not like, hey, I'm Kennedy up here, I'm whoever I'm playing. Um,
Mhm.
who are some of your favorites that you've gotten to play so far?
Um, in Three Musketeers, I was Milady de Winter. She's like this femme fatale villain. And our school was also writing the play. It was a devised process. So I got to do a lot of cool things like looking into her backstory, figuring out her motivations, and seeing how that affected the way that she walked and talked and her actions that she took because we had some wiggle room. I mean, we were basing it on the original classic text, but um, we got to do it in our own way, which was really awesome. Um, so that was a really cool experience. Um, I would say, I mean, Santa Claus is always up there. um, Audrey from Little Shop is a really beautiful character. I don't know if you're familiar with the show at all, but she's the entire show has this like very campy B movie like horror um film vibes. Uh and there's a like a note in the front of the script that says, yes, this is campy, this is elevated, this is ridiculous, but all the characters like wholeheartedly believe in the show. And it's like the thing of like you can't your character can't think the comedy is funny if the comedy is going to work. um so the characters can't think that the show is campy if the show is going to work. So it's this like very heightened character, but she's such a sweetheart and she's going through this like really horrible time. So I think even with the campiness of the show, she's a pretty complex person. It would be pretty easy to play her as a bimbo, but she's also just like a big old sweetheart, and she has this desire to like get out of her town and see the world and have love. Yeah, I love Audrey. I would say those are probably some of my favorites.
And wasn't there I think it was Steve Martin and Rick Moranis, weren't they?
Absolutely.
Horrors, I think that came out in like 88 or 89, right around the time I think I was born, like yeah, like 88, maybe 88 or 89. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tubi's got that, like, for you or anybody listening, Tubi is like, if you whether it's like B horror movies or like classic horror movies, if you like horror, maybe you don't, but they're like the go-to because they have everything. It's crazy. But well, this is fun, man. Well, one thing I wanted to ask you too, Kennedy, and thank you again so much for your time and for taking me and the listeners through your journey here as far as music and performance goes. Um, staying on that on the performance end of things, uh, it's a two-parter. One, what's either musical theater or play that you've seen in person that really inspired you? And then two, are there any either actors or specific performances that you've seen either in film or TV that really inspire you? Not where you're like, I want to be that person, but you go, wow, if I could convey the emotions that they do through how they work as an actor, that would be cool.
Mm-hmm. In terms of live performance, um, there are a few uh, there are a few performances I've seen live that have been just phenomenal. If we're talking about it at a local level, I was really inspired by the Bella Locas, which was a local band in my college town. Um, Highly encourage people to check them out because they're really cool. Um, I had done theater with most of them, and it was really cool to see these performers who I knew and who were my age just doing great work. Uh, these really engaging, fun performances, and just having this musical community was really inspiring. In terms of less local, less niche bands and performances, I saw Mitski in concert, I think 2 summers ago in St. Paul. And oh my gosh, she is such a phenomenal performer, a live performer. She's a phenomenal lyricist. And we were, it was an outdoor, basically a field with a stage in it, because it's the Midwest. And um, she was singing her song Heat Lightning. And there were these giant thunderclouds rolling in, and the wind was picking up, and it was just so beautiful. Um, I think that was really inspiring for me, just seeing like really good music live, um, and seeing people who are passionate and good at what they do is so phenomenal. The second part of the question was who's inspiring to me. Um, I really like the stuff that Chapel Rowan is doing right now. Um, she's also a Midwestern girly, which I appreciate. Her debut album, Rise and Fall of the Midwest Princess, has been on repeat for me. Uh, she has talked about how her performances are drag performances, even though she's a woman and she's got this very feminine stage presence. She says that Chapel Rowan is a drag persona for her, and I think that's really cool. It resonated with me a lot as someone who likes to escape into a character. Um, and talking about like how drag is the performance of gender, um, even if it is one's own gender. I think it's a bio queen in the drag community, but don't quote me on that. I'm not super well versed. Yeah, I think she's such a passionate, phenomenal, like talented singer-songwriter. She's just got this electrifying stage presence. All the videos I see of her concerts are so fun. Her costumes, I'm so jealous of. And I also love that she's, you know, doing like is just a very openly, proudly queer person who's talking about Midwestern queer communities, especially. I think that's really, really cool.
That's awesome. I'll have to check her out, man.
Yeah.
There's so much good music out there. And speaking of good music, um, I think you're on your way, man. Like I said, checking out your single that you put out, um, Hometown Blues, and shout out to Tommy for linking us up. But listening to it a few times, it kind of it's almost like a mini story, you know what I mean? Like in
Mhm.
terms of the different characters that you put in there, um, and kind of that awkwardness of like coming of age and like running into people. I think everybody can relate to that at some point. Like I didn't grow up in a small town, but the way I describe Toledo to people who are unfamiliar is it's kind of like a big little city, if that makes sense. Like even where I
Yeah.
went to high school, it was kind of like a microcosm of Toledo, where it was like big enough that you didn't know everybody personally, but small enough that you had heard of people, or it was like 6 degrees of separation. Um, so when I listened to your song, it just like I said, it kind of played out almost like a short story of like the characters and like feeling a little awkward, or these people are doing these things, they're going to school, or they made it doing this. um can you talk a little bit about just the uh the inspiration for that song, Kennedy, and also your connection with Tommy?
Yeah. I'll talk about Tommy first. He is one of my managers through my school. Our school has a School of the Arts program, which we shortened to SOTA program. Um, uh, it's students who are studying music industry, like the business of the music industry. Um, they take that class and they find local artists and they represent them for the year. And it's a very project-based class in which, you know, performers are the project and you're learning about marketing and booking hands-on, which is a super, super cool program, from CSU Chico. So shout out to the Department of Music, Theater, and Dance because it's a really cool opportunity. And thank you to the SOTA program for taking me on and giving me that opportunity. Um, yeah, and then talking about hometown blues. Um, so the story behind hometown blues is I was applying to colleges after or during high school, and I got rejected from, I think, every single one except for one. And as someone who had always identified as like academics were my life and I had to be perfect and I had to get straight A's, and I had to be the leader of all my extracurriculars. It was really, really, really a blow to just an ego, like a punch in the ego. Um, and I was going to take a gap year in Chico because that's I have some family out there. Um, so it was away from home, but I wasn't completely adultless. Um, and I ended up applying to school at the last minute and getting in. Um, and the following year, I think it was spring of my first year in college, I was online and scrolling through my feeds and seeing all the kids in the year below me get into these really prestigious schools. And it just reopened an old wound. And I went to the piano in the neighboring dorm because my dorm did not have a piano. And I wrote Hometown Blues because I was feeling insecure and I wanted to talk about it. And it's definitely unhealthy to compare yourself to others, and it's so unhealthy to have that imposter syndrome. But I just wanted to voice it and you know give it words so that I could understand it a little better and get through it.
Yeah, it turned out really well. Did you so who did you end up recording it with? You said you wrote it like in the neighboring dorm, but where did you go to actually like record, and who worked with you on like producing it and everything?
Yeah, I worked with a local producer in Chico, Moose Beats, um, who I think you can find through my Instagram. I follow them and uh, you can too. Yeah, he has partnered with a lot of the Soda artists to do their production and recording for free, which is so, so generous. Um, and then just asks for a cut of the money if, we happen to make it really, really big. I've also done recording in my hometown. I've recorded a few songs that aren't finished with production yet. I have a friend named Robbie Swenson who um, you can find him at Little Sifty on Spotify if you're looking to go support another local artist. But he has recording equipment, and I think I texted him uh, during winter break and I said, "Hey, Robbie, can I straight up mooch off of you?" And he said, "Yes, I'm bored." So, that was another great resource. It's good to make friends who have stuff and know how to do things and, use your connections. Yeah.
100%. Well, again, I think Hometown Blues turned out really well for you. Is this the first one that you've ever released to the world of your own music? How did it feel
Yeah.
getting that out to the world? Like, were you excited? Were you a little nervous? All of the above?
I think it was nerve-wracking. Um, I, it's weird to put your feelings on display to the public like that. It feels like with live performance, it's so finite and, people will go home and they'll never be able to access that again. If it's on a streaming platform, they can, put it on repeat and listen as many times as they want and read the lyrics and, psychoanalyze you if they're really inclined. I think, yeah, it's a little nerve-wracking for that reason. And it's very vulnerable, which is, I know live performance is meant to be vulnerable, but it feels more vulnerable to release music for me. Yeah.
What was the reception like from your inner circle, or either from like, did you hear from anybody in your hometown or people that you went to school with, or anybody check it out? Like what was the feedback like from people you knew? Because I'm sure your mom was proud, right? You growing up singing with her in the car, I'm sure she was really proud of you.
Yeah, yeah. My mom was proud. Uh, she likes that I sing now still. I have friends from my hometown who heard the song when I first wrote it, which was I think 2 or 3 years ago. Um, and they were excited to, listen as the production continued. They heard the raw vocals, they heard the initial recording. I think the day I wrote it, they heard the first mix, they heard the second mix, they heard the final mix. And I know that they're all proud of me and they're supporting me, which is, that means the world. I love my friends so much. Yeah, I haven't had any like hometown people who I base the characters off of talk to me about it yet. Um, I think there's, I mean, if they haven't heard it, they haven't heard it. But if they have heard it, there's always a hesitation to assume a song is about you. I mean, Carly Simon, you're so vain. You probably think the song is about you. Um, they're not vain people, and I think most people would find it pretty presentative to make a song about them, um, even if they are a character in it.
Yeah, yeah. And to be clear, I wasn't like digging for the dirt or anything, but just since you mentioned like because I'm not that type of interviewer. But I was just curious, like again, like you said, just being from the Midwest, and not that I mean there's tons of talent that's come out of the Midwest and acting and music. It's so it's not like where we're from. There's I could go on for days, all kinds of great musicians. I digress, but I was just curious, like like you said, since it was kind of loosely based on sort of that experience of going, man, like I'm not getting into these schools, but so and so is doing this and so and so is doing that. If you had gotten any, you know, feedback from anybody, because it turned out really well, and I think, and like you said, you kind of it'd be, I mean, I'll take it a step further. Somebody would have to be kind of a bit of a narcissist if they listen to something where like, oh, this is totally about me. Kennedy totally wrote this about me. Because I think a lot of people can relate to that, and that's what's cool about what you did with the song too, is taking a real life experience but making it relatable. Because I think there's a lot of people who can relate to that. I
Yeah,
remember being in high school, and like we had the big thing at the time that I had to take was the ACT, and even though I studied really hard and I got mostly A's in school, I don't think I got my first C until I was like a senior in college, because something had to fall off. I was like assistant sports editor at the paper. I was working part-time at the local hospital, working every other weekend and 1 day a week. And when I worked during the week, that day was second shift. I was going to school full time. Any advice I could pass on to somebody who's still in school like yourself is take advantage. If you can, I know you're back home right now, but as it goes on, take advantage of doing either like a summer class or even like an online class, because then when you get to your senior year, you're not stacked with like 16 credit hours. Like
yeah,
I got my last semester, my senior year, I only had like 3 real classes, but I was still a full-time student. And I was like, this is awesome. I wish I took like a creative writing class between my junior and senior year, and it kind of helped me go down on my credits. But I'm in saying all that, like it took me 3 times to get I think the highest score I got on my ACT, and we had like an ACT prep lady that came in. I'm trying to remember what her name was, Mrs. Morgan, maybe. And we had like an ACT prep course, and there was another guy who graduated from a different high school, and he went to play football at an Ivy League school. I think it might have been Yale. He was really smart, super nice guy. And I did that class, Kennedy, and like took practice. The highest score I got on my ACT was a 23. So I grew up loving Rudy and Notre Dame, and I would have never been able to sniff getting in there. So I think
yeah.
I think the average like ACT score there is like a 30 or something crazy. But I had a similar experience where I knew people who like there were a couple of people who were like, they kind of partied and didn't take school too seriously. They got like 28s and they were getting into these other schools. And I'm like, they don't even care about school. So I long way of me saying I relate to that. But it all
Yeah.
worked out because I really loved the University at Toledo. It was a great education. I got to stay home and save money. So on one end, I think there's that experience of like going away to school, but there's different versions of that that come in adulthood too. Like for me, leaving Nashville or leaving Toledo rather to go to Nashville, like 500 miles away from my family and my friends and stuff. And having to kind of like grow up on my own, you know what I mean? Like I had great experiences in my hometown, but yeah, I think you made it really relatable. But yeah, to be clear, I wasn't like digging for the dirt, and that would have really sucked if somebody would have gave you some negative feedback. But I mean, on one end, it comes with the territory of being an artist. Like some people are gonna like what you put out, some people aren't gonna like what you put out. But at the end of the day, I think if you make the music that is authentic to you, that you enjoy, it's gonna reach the right people. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, for what it's worth, I didn't get into all those schools, but I'm really happy with where I am now. And I think it's, my tuition's way less than if I had gotten into any of those schools. And I think it's been good for my mental health. And I'm able to do a lot of really cool things where I'm at. I'm able to study things I love. I have biology classes, I have theater classes, I have music extracurricularly. I'm thrilled with where I'm at. And yeah, I think it took me a while to get there, and it's still, I think it stings a little, but it's just the feeling of like, oh, those schools didn't want me. Well, I'm really cool. So
Yeah, it all works out. It all works out. And that's cool too that you have family where you are. You know what I mean? Like you said, you're not completely alone out there, especially going from Minnesota to California. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Because I'm sure that's completely not that it's like going to like a different country, but where you're speaking a different language or anything like that. But I mean, you're literally on the other side of the country. That takes a lot of gut,
yeah,
you know, to to be that far away from home. So I'm glad that you do have a support system out there because that is tough going that far away, but like you said, you're doing what you love to do. I think it's cool that you guys have an awesome music program where you've been able to connect with Tommy and get to record a song like that. I mean, that's really awesome. So, well, I won't rant too much longer, Kennedy, because we're coming up on time. There's a few more things I wanted to ask you if it's cool before we wrap it up. And thank you again so much.
absolutely.
Really
Thank
appreciate.
you.
You're welcome. So a couple of things that Tommy had sent me too were that you draw inspiration from Phoebe Bridgers and tennis. So did
Mhm.
you grow up playing tennis? Do you still play?
Tennis, not the sport, tennis the band.
Oh, the listen to me, the band tennis. Okay, that's hilarious. I'm okay. Well, I am not with all the music that I listen to. I am not familiar with the band tennis. So
It's okay. They're very
that's
cool. They've got like,
I'm gonna edit
yeah,
this. Just leave it in.
they're very cool. They've got this like, their early albums are more surf rock, but they've got a lot of like 80s and 70s synth. Their lead vocalist is really cool, and the band is primarily a married couple, which is awesome. Yeah, I would highly recommend you check them out. They've got a lot of music, and they've been releasing stuff for like 10 years. Um, they're not the most underground, but they're not the most well known. So it's definitely a reasonable conclusion that it's the sport, which is the more well known of the two options.
She had a part on a song from Kid Cudi that I really like called "Loving Me." It's kind of a song that I feel like I mean, he's an introspective dude anyway, but it's about, I feel like, kind of like self-reflection and anxiety and stuff. And she's got an awesome voice, man. Phoebe's, I mean,
Yeah,
and a couple of years ago she did Saturday Night Live, and um she's really been blowing up, man. So it's cool to see her getting her flowers.
absolutely. Yeah. Phoebe Bridgers, like as a lyricist, is so, she has such an interesting way with words. And there was a quote that I found years ago and I have not been able to find since. So maybe it came to me in a dream. But I've drawn inspiration from it nonetheless. She said something like, I would never write a song that I wouldn't say out loud. Um, and I think that speaks to like her honesty and her vulnerability in her songs, but just like the level of detail that she uses when she writes is so beautiful.
It's cool too to see like I think music is in an awesome place right now because there's so much out there. So on some in some aspects it makes it hard to find certain things, but it's also cool. One of the cool things about these algorithms, even though the AI stuff worries me a little bit, but that's a conversation for another day. But one of the cool things about these services, like I have Spotify, and it'll put you on to like bands or artists that you weren't even aware of. You know what I mean? So I'm
Yeah.
down to check out tennis now. I'm a little embarrassed that I thought it was the or um, but um, but yeah, and it's cool to see like the genre blending. Like I said, her doing a song with Kid Cudi and um
Yeah.
like there's metal and rap, there's pop punk and hip hop and like all there's a lot of fusion going on in music right now. And it's
Yeah.
cool. Well, before I officially wrap it up with you here, Kennedy, and thank you again so much for your time. Um this show, like I said, the meaning behind the name March 4th is persevering and moving forward, overcoming obstacles. And again, one of the things that Tommy shared with me is, how you're a passionate advocate for mental health and PTSD recovery, women's rights. Um, so not to get too heavy or to take you to any places you don't want to go, but just with the theme of the show being perseverance and moving forward, is there any advice you want to give anybody, either on, maybe something you went through that you feel like would benefit somebody who's going through a difficult time right now, or just speaking on, you know, mental health or PTSD and your passion for that and for women's rights?
Yeah. Um, I think in terms of mental health, um, I'm not saying this in a, oh, drink water and your problems will be solved kind of way, but I am saying that if you need to drop other parts of your life to prioritize taking care of your basic needs, eating, sleeping, move your body if you're really feeling up to it. Um, if that's what needs to happen for you to prioritize your physical health as a building block for your mental health, then you need to come to terms with that because otherwise your body and your mind are going to come to terms with that for you. Um, I think that's my strongest piece of advice, especially if anyone's really struggling or in denial about struggling. Take care of yourself. Um, I like drinking water won't solve your problems, but it will help you be hydrated. And a hydrated person solves problems better than a dehydrated one. Um, I would say reach out for help when you can. Like if you have to convince yourself, do what you can to convince yourself. If you can't do it because you're embarrassed, then you have to do it anyways. Do it embarrassed. Um, yeah, so much of mental health and recovery is just determination and support from others and unfortunately taking things really really easy in comparison usually to what you've done before, especially if you're recovering from burnout or like a major life event. um, just hold grace for yourself and hold compassion for yourself as you do it. It's going to take a while probably and a lot of hard work, and healing is hard work. So if you feel like you're not doing the same amount of stuff as you used to, you are. It's just different stuff.
I think that's a great place to end it. And Kennedy, I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. I'm grateful that Tommy reached out and he had some kind words for me about just our connection with Anthony Church. And it's been cool getting to know you a little bit more and listen to your song. And for people who aren't aware of you, I'll share the links in the podcast description, but let them know where they can find you.
Yeah, primarily you can find me on Instagram at Ken Jude Music. Um, you can find me on TikTok at Ken.Jude Music, and then on YouTube at Ken Jude Music.
Awesome. Well, thank you again so much for your time. I really appreciate it. It's always cool when somebody from the Midwest is chasing their dreams. So just keep going, keep pursuing your interests. Again, I'm not like that much older than you, but it's okay. I was in college and one day you wake up and you're like in your mid 30s. And I just say that to say and even the advice you just gave, even if you're embarrassed, do it, and I think that's something that's important too, because there's so many people who are afraid to try something because they're afraid of how people are going to react, or they don't think that they're good enough. So I think it's cool that you're doing theater, you're making music. Keep pursuing all of your creative interests that you enjoy, Kennedy. The hometown blues turned out great, and yeah, just keep chasing your dreams, man.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Welcome. You're welcome. Well, you have a great rest of the night.
You too. Thank you.
All righty, dighty, there you have it. That was my conversation with Kennedy Jude. Make sure you go follow her on Instagram at Ken Jude Music. And once again, that is spelled KenJude. The links to all of her stuff will be in the podcast description for this episode. So just scroll down to the bottom of that podcast description, hit those links, and go follow and support Kennedy. Once again, her single Hometown Blues is out now, available where you get your music. Go check it out. I know I'm excited for the new music on the way. So once again, check out all of her links to stay up to date. And even when she gets back to Cali, any shows she's got coming up, it'll all be at those links. So I just want to say directly to Kennedy, thank you so much once again for taking the time to speak with me on this podcast and share your story with myself and the listeners about your journey as an artist and growing up doing theater and getting into music and now pursuing it at Chico State. I just think it's really awesome that they've got a great program there for yourself and great people like Tommy G as well to pursue their passions and get their music and their art out to more people. So thank you so much, Kennedy. I'm rooting for you. Keep chasing your dreams. And I also want to say big thanks again to Tommy G for linking me up with Kennedy and getting her on this podcast. Tommy's a great artist in his own right as well. And the links to his stuff are in the podcast description as well. So, yeah, big thanks all the way around, man. Once again, at Ken Jude Music, Hometown Blues, go check it out. And once again, I hate begging for this stuff, but if you did enjoy what you heard, folks, please take the time to check out my stuff. You can follow me once again at March 4th Pod on Instagram, March 4th Pod on YouTube, March 4th Pod over on TikTok. I think technically TikTok might be March 4th Podcast right now, but it'll be updating soon. But anywho, it's close enough. All the links are in my are in the podcast description as well. And again, I hate begging for likes and subs and all that stuff. But if you did enjoy this conversation with Kennedy, and if this is the first time you've listened to the podcast because Kennedy brought you here, thank you for hopping aboard the pirate ship. But if you take the time to like and subscribe or leave a rating and a review on either Apple or Spotify, I did have my coffee this morning, I'm sure you can tell. But those things go a long way in helping the show get out to more people. So again, whether you have Spotify, Apple, Amazon, iHeart, I just know on Spotify and Apple, you can leave a 5-star review. I know that Apple also allows you to leave comments. And again, when you do that, it goes a long way with the algorithms and stuff and getting the podcast out to more people. And that's what I want, man. I want to put more people on to up and coming artists like Kennedy, like Tommy G, people who are chasing their dreams, persevering, and really, really taking their craft seriously, man. So, yeah, I would appreciate it if you go ahead and do that. Tell a friend to tell a friend. And thank you once again for listening and for all the support that I've gotten from close friends and family. It would take me too much time to name everybody, and I don't want to rant too much here. Excuse me. But yeah, man, I'm just really grateful. I'm in a really grateful headspace right now for a lot of things in my life. But this podcast really is something that I love to do. I don't even like to call it a labor of love, because to call it laborious, even though, like I said, I'm a one-man band, I edit it, I schedule the podcasts, I communicate directly with the artist to get on the show. I put the clips together, and put it out on social media when it comes out. I do all of that, but even though it's work, it's not labor for me, because I really love to do this, and I like to put people on to new music. I like to share conversations that hopefully are uplifting or inspiring and interesting and entertaining. But beyond the interesting and entertaining part, mental health really means something to me. And we touched on it a little bit in this conversation with Kennedy, because she's a big advocate of mental health and PTSD recovery and women's rights. But it was more about her journey to this point in her life with her music and her art. I digress, but I'm a big proponent of mental health. And June, I believe, is actually Mental Health Awareness Month for men, in addition to being Pride Month. So it really is a time of the year, and I guess it's fitting for this podcast, actually, now that I think about it, to be the last episode of the month of June. It's a good touch point on it. Mental health means a lot to me. For those of you who do listen to the podcast regularly, and this isn't your first time on the pirate ship listening to the podcast, mental health means a lot to me, man. And I've shared a little bit about my mental health journey. I try not to make these conversations about myself, and I also try not to overshare, private stuff about my personal life, because that's not what this show is about. But at the same time, I have shared a little bit about my journey over these past 4 years, both with the show and with the things that I've gone through, on a surface level. Because, like I said, I don't like to air out personal stuff in public forums, because it's not, to me, that's just not what I'm about. To each their own. But I just shared to let people know that, hey, even though the meaning of my show is perseverance, moving forward, March 4th, right? And my platform is a positive one, and I try to spread that. At the same time, I go through my ups and downs just like anybody, even though I consider myself to be a pretty positive person. So I say all that to say, in honor of Pride Month and Men's Mental Health Awareness Month, I just want everybody to take care of themselves out there. Keep the faith and be kind to one another. It's something that I say at the end of every episode as a tribute to my grandfather. But I think I'm going to start adding be kind to yourself as well, because a lot of us, myself included, we wouldn't treat anybody the way that we treat ourselves. So make sure you take care of yourself. It's cool to imbibe every now and again, and ice cream and pizza and those kind of things, but eat healthy. Try to exercise. It's great for your mental health. Any type of art or reading or music, it's a great release for those negative emotions. Poetry, journaling. Just find something where you can channel any of that pain or negative energy or trauma that you've been through in a positive way. And don't be afraid to talk to people close to you. And don't be afraid to seek therapy, man. Therapy has been a big help for me as well. So those are things, not that you asked for my advice, but again, just in honor of what this month represents in the United States. Those are all things that have been helpful for me. Exercise, diet. I need to be better about my sleep, because I don't get enough sleep, and that can cause stress and anxiety as well when you run yourself down. So I'm trying to be more disciplined about that. But exercise and music are huge for me, man, and doing this podcast. So long way of me saying thank you to everybody who listens. And that's how I'm going to end this. Be kind to yourselves. Once again, go check out Kennedy Jude's music at Ken Jude Music on Instagram. Run up the numbers on her single Hometown Blues. Check out Tommy G. And if you want to, check me out at March 4th Pod. So I'm going to officially wrap this bad boy up by saying, keep the faith and be kind to one another, and be kind to yourself. Courtesy of Kennedy Jude, here is her single, Hometown Blues. Peace.
Some athlete from my hometown tells me that he made it, wonders how I've been. Some genius from my high school asks what I've been up to. It's funny running into you at this tiny little supermarket on the edge of town, 'cause we both flew in for the holidays. There's no one else around, and I just kinda wanna scream and stand my feet and leave this conversation. I've got the hometown blues. Why is there just released an album. I heard it's doing well. I had to ask my roommate if my clothes smelled too bad, 'cause I couldn't tell. I don't think that I'm doing well, but I don't know the remedy. It's clear I'm not evolved enough, 'cause I can't handle jealousy. It's obvious to everyone I had to write a stupid song to cope. I've got the hometown blues. Why is everyone so cool? Why'd they all make it out and get to go to school out on the East Coast? Because they're smarter than me. Why couldn't I do that? There's something wrong with me. This artist that I still know fostered all their talents. I should shake their hand and give myself a beating, 'cause I'm no good at being exactly like my friend.